Poor boy saves millionaire's daughter, then shocks everyone with his unexpected request. In the bustling city of Millbrook, where skyscrapers cast long shadows over narrow streets, lived two boys whose lives could not have been more different. Ethan Carter, a bright-eyed 12-year-old with a mop of unruly brown hair, called the rundown Sunnyside housing project home. His days were a constant struggle against poverty, with his single mother working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Despite the hardships, Ethan possessed an irrepressible spirit and a heart full of dreams. He excelled in school, particularly in science, and harbored aspirations of becoming a doctor someday, a goal that seemed as distant as the stars given his circumstances. Across town, in the luxurious Millbrook Heights, lived Jonathan Goldstein, CEO of Goldstein Enterprises and one of the city's wealthiest residents. At 45, Jonathan had everything money could buy, but his most prized possession was his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Born with a rare heart condition, Lily's health had always been fragile, casting a shadow over the Goldstein family's otherwise charmed life. Jonathan doted on Lily, his only child, showering her with every comfort and protection money could provide. But even his vast wealth couldn't shield her from the loneliness that came with her condition. Homeschooled due to her health concerns, Lily's world was limited to the walls of their mansion and the occasional supervised outing. The paths of these two families, one struggling to survive, the other struggling despite having everything, seemed destined never to cross. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Ethan's daily routine involved a long walk to school, taking him through various neighborhoods of Millbrook. He'd often pause at the gates of Millbrook Heights, marveling at the manicured lawns and grand houses, wondering what life was like for the people inside. Little did he know that behind one of those gates, a little girl often watched him pass by, curious about the boy who seemed so carefree despite his worn clothes and patched backpack. As summer approached, bringing with it the promise of warmer days and new adventures, neither Ethan nor the Goldsteins could have anticipated the event that was about to bring their worlds colliding together. An event that would challenge their preconceptions, test their values, and ultimately change their lives in ways they never could have imagined. The stage was set for an encounter that would prove that sometimes the most valuable things in life can't be bought, and that true wealth lies not in one's bank account, but in the capacity of one's heart to give, to empathize, and to connect with others across the divides of society. The day that would change everything started like any other for Ethan. He woke before dawn, careful not to disturb his mother, who had worked a late shift the night before. After a meager breakfast of toast and juice, he set out for school, his path taking him past the familiar gates of Millbrook Heights. As he approached the Goldstein mansion, something caught his eye. The usually closed gates were slightly ajar, and he could hear what sounded like muffled sobs coming from inside. Curiosity got the better of him, and Ethan cautiously pushed the gate open, peering into the manicured garden beyond. There, huddled under a large oak tree, was a small figure in a pink dress. It was Lily Goldstein, though Ethan didn't know her name yet. She was curled up, her body shaking with sobs, a small inhaler clutched tightly in her hand. Ethan hesitated for a moment. He knew he shouldn't be there. This was private property, and kids like him weren't welcome in places like this. But the sight of the crying girl tugged at his heart. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. "Hey," he called softly, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. "Are you okay?" Lily's head snapped up, her tear-stained face a mixture of fear and surprise. Who are you?" she stammered, backing away slightly. Ethan held up his hands, trying to appear non-threatening. "I'm Ethan. I was just walking by and heard you crying. What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Lily relaxed a little, seeing the genuine concern in Ethan's eyes. "I'm Lily," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I snuck out. I've never been outside alone before, and now I can't breathe properly, and I don't know how to get back inside, and Daddy's going to be so mad." Her words dissolved into fresh sobs, and Ethan felt his heart clench. He'd never seen someone look so lost and scared. Without thinking, he sat down next to her. "It's okay, Lily," he said gently. "Take deep breaths, in and out, slowly." He demonstrated, and Lily tried to follow along, her breathing gradually steadying. As Lily calmed down, Ethan noticed her getting paler. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked, worry creeping into his voice. Lily shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "My heart, it doesn't feel right. I need my medicine, but it's in the house." Panic surged through Ethan. He knew this was serious. "Can you walk? We need to get you inside." Lily tried to stand but stumbled, her legs weak. Without hesitation, Ethan scooped her up in his arms. She was surprisingly light, and he found he could carry her easily. "Hold on," he said, determination setting his jaw. "I'm going to get you help." Ethan ran towards the house, Lily cradled against his chest. As he reached the front door, it burst open, revealing a frantic Jonathan Goldstein. "Lily!" he cried, his face a mask of terror and relief. Then his eyes fell on Ethan, confusion and suspicion flashing across his features. "Who are you? What are you doing with my daughter?" Ethan, panting from the exertion, quickly explained the situation. "She needs her medicine, sir. She said something about her heart not feeling right." Jonathan's face paled. He quickly took Lily from Ethan's arms, rushing her inside. Ethan, unsure of what to do, followed hesitantly. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Jonathan administered Lily's medication, while his wife called for their private doctor. Ethan stood awkwardly in the corner of the opulent living room, feeling out of place among the expensive furnishings. As color returned to Lily's cheeks and her breathing normalized, Jonathan turned his attention to Ethan. His earlier suspicion had been replaced by gratitude. "You saved my daughter's life," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." Ethan shuffled his feet, embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what anyone would do," he mumbled. Jonathan shook his head, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "No, son, what you did was extraordinary. You risked getting in trouble to help a stranger. That kind of courage and kindness is rare." As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Ethan suddenly realized how late he was for school. I should go," he said, edging towards the door. "I'm glad Lily's okay." Jonathan nodded, scribbling something on a piece of paper. "Here's my card. Please come back this evening. I want to thank you properly." Ethan took the card, his mind reeling from the morning's events. As he hurried off to school, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, something that would change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. That evening, with butterflies in his stomach, Ethan returned to the Goldstein mansion. His mother, initially skeptical of his story, had insisted on accompanying him. As they were ushered into the grand foyer by a butler, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at the opulence surrounding them. Jonathan Goldstein greeted them warmly, his earlier gratitude still evident in his eyes. "Ethan, Mrs. Carter, thank you for coming. Please, join us in the living room." As they settled onto plush sofas, Lily entered the room, her face lighting up at the sight of Ethan. "You came back," she exclaimed, rushing over to hug him. Ethan, unused to such displays of affection, awkwardly patted her back. "Of course," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." As the adults began to talk, Lily pulled Ethan aside, eager to show him her collection of science books. As they pored over diagrams of the human heart, Ethan's eyes widened in recognition. "Wait," he said, pointing to an illustration. "Is this what you have?" "Hypoplastic left heart syndrome?" Lily nodded, surprised. "How did you know?" Ethan explained how he had been researching various heart conditions for a school project. As he spoke, his passion for medicine shone through, his eyes alight with enthusiasm. From across the room, Jonathan observed the interaction with growing interest. He had expected to meet a typical 12-year-old, but Ethan's knowledge and articulation surprised him. As the evening progressed, Jonathan engaged Ethan in conversation, probing gently about his interests and aspirations. What he discovered both impressed and saddened him. Here was a boy with immense potential. Intelligent, kind, and driven, but held back by circumstances beyond his control. Ethan spoke of his dream to become a doctor, to help people like Lily, but also of the reality of his situation, the struggling school he attended, the lack of resources, the slim chances of ever affording medical school. Jonathan found himself deeply moved by Ethan's story. He saw in this boy a reflection of himself at that age, hungry for knowledge, eager to make a difference. But where Jonathan had had every advantage, Ethan faced seemingly insurmountable odds. As the Carters prepared to leave, Jonathan made a decision. He pulled Ethan's mother aside, speaking in low, urgent tones. Mrs. Carter's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. Ethan, oblivious to this exchange, was saying goodbye to Lily. "Maybe we can be friends?" Lily asked hopefully. Ethan nodded, a warm feeling spreading through his chest at the prospect of having a friend who shared his interests. As they walked home, Ethan chattered excitedly about the evening, about Lily's books, about Mr. Goldstein's questions regarding his future. His mother listened silently, her mind still reeling from Jonathan's offer. Jonathan Goldstein had proposed to pay for Ethan's education, not just through high school, but all the way through medical school if that remained Ethan's dream. It was an offer that could change everything, an opportunity beyond their wildest imaginations. But it was also an offer that came with implicit strings, with a shift in power dynamics that made Mrs. Carter uneasy. As she looked at her son, his face animated with excitement, she wondered how to tell him about this life-changing proposition, and more importantly, how to navigate the complex emotions and implications that came with it. What had started as a simple act of kindness had unveiled a world of possibility and complication that neither the Carters nor the Goldsteins had anticipated. The following week was a whirlwind of emotions and decisions for Ethan and his mother. After much discussion and soul-searching, they decided to accept Jonathan Goldstein's offer of educational support, but with some carefully negotiated terms to maintain their independence and dignity. Ethan would transfer to Millbrook Preparatory Academy, a prestigious private school that would challenge his intellect and provide opportunities his current school couldn't offer. The Goldsteins would cover his tuition and necessary expenses, but the Carters insisted on contributing what they could to Ethan's education fund. As Ethan prepared for his first day at his new school, a mix of excitement and anxiety churned in his stomach. He was thrilled at the prospect of advanced classes and well-equipped science labs, but also terrified of not fitting in among his wealthy peers. His fears weren't entirely unfounded. On his first day, Ethan's worn clothes and second-hand backpack stood out starkly among the designer outfits and latest gadgets of his classmates. Whispers and curious glances followed him through the hallways, but Ethan was determined to make the most of this opportunity. He threw himself into his studies with a passion that impressed his teachers. In class, his insightful questions and eager participation quickly earned him a reputation as a serious student. However, social acceptance proved more challenging. Many of his classmates, upon learning of his background, kept their distance. Some, like Brad Thompson, the son of a local business tycoon, were openly hostile. "What's the matter, charity case?" Brad sneered one day after Ethan aced a particularly difficult math test. "Trying to prove you belong here? Newsflash, you don't." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides, but he remembered his mother's words. "Your actions speak louder than any insult. Prove them wrong by succeeding." So Ethan gritted his teeth and worked harder. He stayed late in the library, poring over advanced textbooks. He sought out extra credit assignments and joined the school's science club. Slowly but surely, his efforts began to pay off. His test scores were consistently at the top of the class. His science fair project on cardiac arrhythmias won first place, earning praise from the judges and grudging respect from some of his peers. Even Brad's taunts began to lose their sting as Ethan's confidence in his abilities grew. Throughout this time, Ethan's friendship with Lily Goldstein deepened. They would often study together after school, with Ethan explaining complex scientific concepts in ways that Lily could easily understand. Lily, in turn, helped Ethan navigate the social intricacies of their privileged world. But as Ethan's academic star rose, he found himself facing an unexpected dilemma. His success at Millbrook Prep had opened doors he never thought possible. Top universities were showing interest in him, and there was talk of fast-tracking him into advanced placement courses. These opportunities, however, came with increased demands on his time. Ethan found himself spending less time at home, missing family dinners and the quiet moments with his mother that he had always cherished. One evening, as Ethan was rushing out to attend a special lecture at the local university, his mother stopped him. "Ethan," she said, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern, "I'm so proud of everything you're achieving, but I want to make sure you're not losing yourself in all of this. Are you happy?" The question caught Ethan off guard. Was he happy? He was grateful for the opportunities, excited about his future prospects. But there was also a gnawing feeling of guilt about leaving his old life behind, a fear of drifting away from his roots. I think so, Mom, he said hesitantly. It's just sometimes I feel like I'm living in two different worlds, and I'm not sure where I belong anymore. His mother pulled him into a tight hug. You belong wherever your heart and your values lead you, sweetheart. Just don't forget where you came from, and don't lose sight of why you wanted this in the first place. As Ethan headed to the lecture, his mother's words echoed in his mind. He realized that in his determination to succeed, to prove himself worthy of the chance he'd been given, he had started to lose touch with the very things that made him who he was. His compassion, his desire to help others, the simple joys of his life before. This realization marked a turning point for Ethan. He decided to find a balance between his new opportunities and his core values. He started volunteering at a local clinic, using his growing knowledge to help those who couldn't afford proper medical care. He made an effort to spend more quality time with his mother, even if it meant saying no to some social invitations from his new friends. These choices weren't always easy. There were times when Ethan felt the pull of two worlds, the pressure to conform to his new environment, conflicting with his desire to stay true to himself. But with each decision, each small act of staying connected to his roots, Ethan felt more grounded, more sure of who he was and who he wanted to become. As his first year at Millbrook Prep drew to a close, Ethan had not only excelled academically, but had also grown as a person. He had learned valuable lessons about identity, privilege, and the importance of staying true to one's values. While Ethan was navigating his new life at Millbrook Prep, a secondary plot was unfolding within the Goldstein family. Jonathan Goldstein, inspired by Ethan's story and his daughter's growing friendship with the boy, began to reevaluate his own life and business practices. For years, Jonathan had been solely focused on growing his company and increasing profits. His encounter with Ethan had opened his eyes to the vast disparities in society and the potential that often went untapped due to lack of resources. One evening, as Jonathan was reviewing proposals for a new development project, he came across a plan to build luxury condos in an area that would displace several low-income families. In the past, he might have approved it without a second thought, but now he hesitated. He thought of Ethan's mother, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. He thought of the families in that neighborhood who might have children with dreams and potential like Ethan's. For the first time, Jonathan began to consider the human cost of his business decisions. This internal conflict came to a head during a board meeting where the condo project was being discussed. As his colleagues argued in favor of the project, citing potential profits, Jonathan found himself speaking up. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the chatter, "I think we need to consider more than just our bottom line here. What if, instead of luxury condos, we developed affordable housing? What if we included community spaces, maybe even a learning center for local kids?" The room fell silent. Jonathan Goldstein advocating for affordable housing? It was unheard of. Some board members exchanged skeptical glances, while others looked intrigued. "Jonathan," one of the older board members said carefully, "I understand you've had a personal experience recently that's affected you. But we have a responsibility to our shareholders to maximize profits." Jonathan nodded, acknowledging the point. "I agree that we have a responsibility to our shareholders, but I believe we also have a responsibility to the communities we build in. By investing in these communities, we're not just doing the right thing, we're creating goodwill, fostering loyalty, and potentially opening up new markets." As Jonathan continued to outline his vision, he could see the mood in the room shifting. Some board members remained skeptical, but others were beginning to see the potential in this new approach. By the end of the meeting, Jonathan had secured tentative approval to explore his idea further. It was a small victory, but one that filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. As he drove home that evening, Jonathan's mind was buzzing with possibilities. He thought about setting up a foundation to provide educational opportunities for underprivileged children. He considered how he could use his influence to encourage other business leaders to adopt more socially responsible practices. For the first time in a long time, Jonathan felt like he was doing more than just accumulating wealth. He was making a real difference. When he arrived home, he found Lily and Ethan in the study, poring over a biology textbook. Seeing them together, his daughter, whose health had always been his primary concern, and Ethan, the boy who had opened his eyes to a world beyond his privileged bubble, Jonathan felt a surge of emotion. He realized that by helping Ethan, he had not only changed the boy's life, but had also set in motion changes in his own life, and potentially in the lives of many others. As he watched the two children engrossed in their studies, Jonathan silently vowed to continue down this new path, to use his resources and influence to create opportunities for those who needed them most. The ripple effects of that fateful day when Ethan saved Lily were still spreading, touching lives in ways that none of them could have anticipated. As the months passed, the relationship between Ethan and the Goldstein family continued to evolve in unexpected ways. What had started as a chance encounter had blossomed into a deep and meaningful connection that was changing all of their lives. Ethan and Lily's friendship grew stronger with each passing day. Despite their age difference and vastly different backgrounds, they found in each other kindred spirits united by their love for learning and their experiences with adversity. Ethan, with his economic struggles, and Lily, with her health challenges. Their study sessions became a regular fixture, with Ethan often visiting the Goldstein mansion after school. These sessions were more than just academic pursuits. They were opportunities for both children to experience aspects of life they had been missing. Jonathan was taken aback by the question. He had never considered that his help might be a source of conflict for Ethan. After a moment of reflection, he replied, "Ethan, you're right. There are many deserving children out there. But you know what? You opened my eyes to that fact. And now, because of you, I'm working on ways to help more children get the opportunities they deserve." He went on to share his plans for the foundation he was setting up, explaining how Ethan's story had inspired him to do more. "You see, Ethan," he concluded, "by accepting help, you're not just changing your own life, you're helping to create change for others too." This conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. Ethan began to see Jonathan not just as a benefactor, but as a mentor and role model. And Jonathan found in Ethan not only a protege, but a moral compass, someone whose perspective helped keep him grounded and focused on what truly mattered. As these relationships deepened and evolved, they created a support network that would prove crucial in facing the challenges that lay ahead. The bonds formed between Ethan, Lily, and the Goldsteins were reshaping all of their lives in profound and unexpected ways. The day of Millbrook Prep's annual charity gala arrived, bringing with it a convergence of tensions that had been building over the past year. The gala was the school's biggest event, where wealthy parents showcased their philanthropy and students presented projects highlighting various social issues. Ethan had been working for months on a presentation about healthcare inequality, inspired by his experiences volunteering at the local clinic. He saw it as an opportunity to raise awareness about the challenges faced by communities like Sunnyside. As Ethan stood nervously beside his display board, he saw the Goldsteins enter the crowded auditorium. Lily gave him an encouraging thumbs up, while Jonathan nodded approvingly. But their warm gestures were offset by the cold stares and whispers from some of the other parents and students. Brad Thompson and his father, Thomas Thompson, Jonathan's biggest business rival, stopped in front of Ethan's booth. Brad smirked, his eyes glinting with malice. "Well, if it isn't our resident charity case, tell me, Ethan, how does it feel to be the school's pet project?" Before Ethan could respond, Mr. Thompson chimed in, his voice dripping with false concern. Now, Bradley, we should be applauding young Ethan here. After all, he's living proof of how our generosity can help the less fortunate." Ethan felt his face burning with a mix of anger and shame. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but was cut off by another voice. "I'd say Ethan is living proof of how much untapped potential exists in communities we too often overlook. Wouldn't you agree, Thomas?" Jonathan Goldstein had appeared beside Ethan, his hand resting supportively on the boy's shoulder. His voice was calm, but there was a steely glint in his eyes. Thomas Thompson's smile faltered slightly. "Ah, Jonathan, I was just telling young Ethan here how admirable your little project is." "Project?" Jonathan's eyebrow arched. "Ethan is not a project, Thomas. He's a brilliant young man who has earned his place here through hard work and determination, something I think we could all learn from." The tension in the air was palpable. Other parents and students had stopped to watch the confrontation unfold. Ethan felt as though he were standing at the center of a storm, with years of class prejudice and business rivalries swirling around him. Suddenly, Lily's voice cut through the tension. "Ethan saved my life," she said, her clear voice carrying across the now silent auditorium. "When I was scared and alone, he risked everything to help me. He's the bravest, kindest person I know, and if anyone has a problem with him being here, they'll have to deal with me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Lily Goldstein, the frail girl who rarely left her home, was standing tall, her eyes flashing with determination as she defended her friend. Emboldened by Lily's words, Ethan found his voice. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "I may not come from wealth, but I'm not here because of charity. I'm here because I earned it, and I intend to use this opportunity to make a difference, not just for myself, but for my community." He gestured to his presentation. "That's what this is about. Not where we come from, but what we can do to help others. Isn't that what this gala is supposed to be about?" A moment of stunned silence followed Ethan's words. Then slowly, applause began to build. It started with Jonathan and Lily, spread to some of Ethan's classmates, and soon filled the auditorium. As the applause washed over him, Ethan realized that this moment was about more than just defending himself. It was about challenging the very assumptions and prejudices that had shaped his world. In standing up for himself, he had given voice to something much larger, a call for genuine understanding and equality that resonated with many in the room. The annual charity gala, usually a predictable affair of polite smiles and token gestures, had become the stage for a confrontation that would have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. In the days following the charity gala, Millbrook Prep was abuzz with discussions about what had transpired. Ethan's impassioned speech and Lily's staunch defense had sparked conversations about privilege, opportunity, and the true meaning of charity. For Ethan, the aftermath of the gala brought both positive and negative consequences. Many of his classmates, impressed by his courage, began to see him in a new light. Some even approached him to learn more about his healthcare inequality project. However, he also faced increased hostility from Brad and his group of friends, who felt humiliated by the public confrontation. Jonathan Goldstein, recognizing the broader implications of what had occurred, decided it was time to take more concrete action. He called a meeting with the school board, proposing a comprehensive scholarship program for talented students from underprivileged backgrounds. "What happened at the gala," Jonathan argued, "showed us that we have an opportunity, no, a responsibility, to do more." Ethan Carter is just one example of the potential we're leaving untapped in our community. The board's reaction was mixed. Some members, moved by Ethan's story and Jonathan's passion, were enthusiastic about the idea. Others, however, expressed concerns about maintaining the school's standards and culture. As the debate heated up, Jonathan realized that changing entrenched mindsets would be more challenging than he had anticipated. He decided to bring in reinforcements. At the next board meeting, Jonathan arrived with Ethan and Mrs. Carter in tow. He had asked them to share their experiences, the challenges they had faced, the impact of the opportunity Ethan had been given, and their hopes for the future. Mrs. Carter spoke eloquently about the struggle of raising a gifted child in a resource-poor environment. "Every parent wants the best for their child," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But sometimes, no matter how hard you work, those opportunities just aren't within reach." What this scholarship has done for Ethan, it's not just changing his life, it's changing our entire family's future. Ethan then stood up, his initial nervousness giving way to determination as he began to speak. He talked about his experiences at Millbrook Prep, the challenges he'd faced, but also the incredible opportunities he'd been given. He shared his dream of becoming a doctor and how the education he was receiving was making that dream seem attainable. "But it's not just about me," Ethan concluded. "In my neighborhood, there are so many kids with dreams and talents. They just need a chance to show what they're capable of. This scholarship program could be that chance." The room was silent as Ethan finished speaking. Even the board members who had been most resistant to the idea seemed moved by his words. Taking advantage of the moment, Jonathan pressed his point. "This is about more than just charity," he said. "It's about investing in the future of our community. These students will bring new perspectives, new ideas to our school. They'll challenge us to be better, to think differently. Isn't that what education is all about?" After much discussion and debate, the board agreed to implement a pilot scholarship program. It wasn't as comprehensive as Jonathan had initially proposed, but it was a start, a foot in the door that could pave the way for bigger changes in the future. As news of the scholarship program spread, it sparked a range of reactions within the Millbrook Prep community. Some parents and students embraced the idea enthusiastically, seeing it as a positive step towards greater diversity and social responsibility. Others were more hesitant, worried about how it might change the school's dynamic. Ethan found himself at the center of this ongoing debate. Some students looked to him as a trailblazer, seeking his advice on how they could get involved in making the school more inclusive. Others, like Brad Thompson, doubled down on their resentment, seeing the scholarship program as a threat to their perceived status. One afternoon, as Ethan was leaving the science lab, he found himself cornered by Brad and two of his friends. "You think you've won, don't you?" Brad sneered. "But you'll never really be one of us. You're just a charity case, and everyone knows it." Ethan felt a familiar surge of anger, but he took a deep breath, remembering all he had learned over the past year. "You're right, Brad," Ethan said calmly. "I'm not one of you. I'm here because I earned it, not because of who my parents are, and I'm proud of that." Brad's face reddened with anger, but before he could respond, a voice called out from down the hall. "Is there a problem here?" It was Mr. Garrett, the science teacher. As Brad and his friends skulked away, Mr. Garrett approached Ethan. "You handled that well," he said, a note of admiration in his voice. "You know, Ethan, you've inspired a lot of changes around here. Change isn't always easy, but it's necessary. Keep your head up." This encounter, while unpleasant, reinforced Ethan's determination. He realized that the scholarship program wasn't just about giving opportunities to kids like him. It was about changing mindsets and breaking down barriers. In the weeks that followed, Ethan threw himself into promoting the scholarship program. He spoke at local schools in underprivileged areas, sharing his story and encouraging other students to apply. He worked with the school administration to set up mentoring programs to help new scholarship students adjust to life at Millbrook Prep. Jonathan Goldstein, seeing Ethan's passion, decided to take things a step further. He announced that Goldstein Enterprises would match every donation made to the scholarship fund, effectively doubling its impact. As the school year drew to a close, the fruits of these efforts began to show. The scholarship program had received an overwhelming number of applications, and the selection committee was impressed by the quality of candidates. Ethan, sitting in on one of the selection meetings as a student representative, felt a surge of emotion as he looked through the applications. Each one represented a story, a dream, a potential future that might have gone unrealized without this opportunity. As he shared his insights with the committee, helping them understand the challenges and perspectives of students from backgrounds similar to his, Ethan realized how far he had come. He was no longer just a recipient of charity, he had become an agent of change, using his experience to help shape a more inclusive future for Millbrook Prep. The conflict was far from fully resolved. There were still those who resisted the changes, who clung to old prejudices and fears. But a significant step had been taken. The conversation had been started, minds were beginning to open, and the foundations for a more equitable and diverse Millbrook Prep were being laid. As Ethan left the meeting, he felt a sense of pride and purpose. He had faced adversity, stood up for what he believed in, and was now helping to create opportunities for others. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had shaped him into someone who could make a real difference in the world. As summer approached, bringing with it the end of Ethan's first year at Millbrook Prep, a series of events unfolded that would mark a significant turning point in his life and the lives of those around him. The success of the pilot scholarship program had exceeded all expectations. Not only had it brought in a diverse group of talented students, but it had also sparked a wider conversation about privilege and opportunity within the Millbrook community. Local news outlets picked up the story, shining a spotlight on the positive changes happening at the school. This attention caught the eye of a national education reform organization. They reached out to Jonathan Goldstein, expressing interest in using Millbrook Prep's scholarship program as a model for similar initiatives across the country. Excited by the possibility of expanding the program's impact, Jonathan called a meeting with Ethan, Lily, and key members of the school administration. "This is an opportunity to create real systemic change," he explained, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "But I want to make sure we do it right. Ethan, your perspective will be crucial in shaping this." Ethan felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The idea of helping to create opportunities for kids like him on a national scale was thrilling, but he also felt the weight of the responsibility. "I want to help," he said firmly, "but I also want to make sure we don't lose sight of the individual stories, the personal struggles behind each application." Lily, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "What if we created a student advisory board?" she suggested. A group of scholarship students who could provide ongoing input and help mentor new students. The idea was met with enthusiastic approval. As the discussion continued, plans began to take shape for not just expanding the scholarship program, but for creating a comprehensive support system for students from underprivileged backgrounds. For Ethan, this marked a new chapter in his journey. He was no longer just a recipient of an opportunity. He was becoming a leader, someone with the power to shape policies and change lives. As the meeting concluded, Jonathan pulled Ethan aside. "You know, when I first offered to pay for your education, I thought I was just helping one bright kid," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined it would lead to all this. You've changed more than just your own life, Ethan. You've changed this school, this community, and now you're about to change lives across the country." Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude and determination. "Thank you for giving me the chance," he said. "I promise I'll make the most of it." As he left the meeting, Ethan felt as if he were standing on the threshold of something much bigger than himself. The future stretched out before him, full of challenges and opportunities. He was ready to embrace it all, armed with the knowledge, experiences, and relationships he had gained over the past year. The boy who had once dreamed of becoming a doctor to help his community now saw a path to creating change on a much larger scale. It was a new direction, one that filled him with both excitement and purpose. As Ethan prepared for his second year at Millbrook Prep, he found himself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past year. Sitting on the front steps of his home in Sunnyside, he marveled at how much had changed, not just in his circumstances, but in himself. The shy, uncertain boy who had first walked through the gates of Millbrook Prep was gone. In his place was a young man with a strong sense of purpose and a growing confidence in his ability to make a difference in the world. Ethan thought about the challenges he had faced, the initial isolation, the sneers and whispers, the moments of self-doubt. But he also remembered the triumphs, acing his first exam, standing up to Brad Thompson, seeing the scholarship program become a reality. He realized that each of these experiences, both good and bad, had shaped him. The adversity had made him stronger, more resilient. The successes had shown him what he was capable of achieving. And throughout it all, he had learned the invaluable lesson of staying true to himself and his roots. Ethan's relationship with the Goldsteins had evolved in ways he never could have imagined. Lily, once a stranger he had helped on a whim, was now his closest friend and staunchest supporter. Their bond had deepened through shared experiences and mutual understanding, transcending the barriers of class and background. Jonathan Goldstein had transformed from a distant figure of wealth and power to a mentor and father figure. Ethan, appreciated not just the opportunities Jonathan had given him, but the way he had involved Ethan in the process of creating change, valuing his input and perspective. As he thought about the upcoming national expansion of the scholarship program, Ethan felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the potential for impact. He was eager to share his experiences, to help shape a program that could open doors for thousands of kids like him. But amidst all these grand plans and big ideas, Ethan hadn't lost sight of his original dream. He still wanted to become a doctor, to help people in the most direct way possible. Now, however, he saw how he could combine that goal with his newfound passion for social change. He envisioned founding clinics in underserved areas, using his future medical knowledge alongside his first-hand understanding of the challenges faced by low-income communities. Ethan also reflected on how his experiences had affected his view of wealth and success. He had seen firsthand that money alone didn't bring happiness or fulfillment. The Goldsteins, for all their wealth, had found true joy in using their resources to help others. It was a lesson Ethan took to heart, vowing that no matter where life took him, he would always strive to use his success to lift others up. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street, Ethan's mother joined him on the steps. She looked at her son with pride, seeing not just the physical changes of a boy growing into a young man, but the inner growth, the maturity, compassion, and sense of purpose that now radiated from him. "You've come so far, Ethan," she said softly, "but you haven't forgotten where you came from. I'm so proud of you." Ethan smiled, wrapping an arm around his mother's shoulders. "I couldn't have done any of it without you, Mom," he said. "Everything I am, everything I'm trying to do, it all started with the values you taught me." As they sat together, watching the familiar sights and sounds of their neighborhood, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude. He was grateful for the opportunities he had been given, for the people who had believed in him, and for the strength he had found within himself to make the most of it all. The journey ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, but Ethan felt ready to face them. He had found his purpose, his voice, and his place in the world, and he was determined to use all of it to create positive change, one step at a time. As the new school year began, Millbrook Prep was a changed place. The halls buzzed with a diverse mix of voices as students from all walks of life came together in pursuit of knowledge and growth. The scholarship program, now in its second year, had brought in a new cohort of bright, motivated students from underprivileged backgrounds. Ethan, now a sophomore and co-chair of the Student Advisory Board, found himself at the center of this transformation. As he helped new scholarship students navigate their first days at Millbrook, he saw in their eyes the same mix of fear and determination he had felt a year ago. In a special assembly to welcome the new students, Jonathan Goldstein stood at the podium, his eyes scanning the diverse crowd before him. "A year ago," he began, "a single act of kindness opened our eyes to the vast potential that exists in every community. Today, we continue to build on that legacy." He gestured to Ethan, seated in the front row. "Ethan Carter showed us that talent and determination can overcome any barrier, but more than that, he showed us the power of giving everyone a chance to succeed." As applause filled the auditorium, Ethan felt a swell of emotion. He thought about how far he had come and about all the lives that were now being touched by the ripple effects of that one fateful day. The story of the poor boy who saved a millionaire's daughter had transformed into something much bigger, a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of opportunity, and the incredible change that can occur when people from different worlds come together with open hearts and minds. As Ethan looked around at the faces of his fellow students, some familiar, many new, all full of potential, he knew that this was just the beginning. The journey ahead would be challenging, but with determination, empathy, and a commitment to lifting others as they climbed, anything was possible. In that moment, Ethan realized that the greatest gift he had received wasn't the scholarship or the education. It was the chance to be part of something bigger than himself, to help create a world where every child, regardless of their background, could have the opportunity to reach for their dreams. And that, he knew, was worth more than all the millions in the world.